There's always a controversy at Cannes. This time it's an out-of-competition opening night film lighting the spark. Is the Cannes Film Festival in tune with the times when it rolls out the red carpet for Johnny Depp, megastar of the silver screen, and a polarizing figure for those who followed his acquittal and his winning that ugly bear-it-all trial that pitted the actor against his ex-wife Amber Heard. We'll ask about the festival feting Depp, who in his return plays France's King Louis XV, and how much has changed in the 5 years since the MeToo reckoning began. In 2018, actresses posed on the red carpet against the film industry's predators. This year's competition features a record 7 women directors in official competition. Not enough to wish away male and female aggressors, argues a group of 123 actresses. They've penned an open letter to the festival. We'll ask about old habits and a changing entertainment landscape. The movie/streaming industry tells the stories of our times. How inclusive should those stories be? What kind of films should we be bankrolling? What kind should we be celebrating? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the changing times at Cannes, and joining us from the French Riviera Resort, film critic Rebecca Leffler. Rebecca, it's day 3. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm not a film critic. I'm the France correspondent for Screen International.
Screen International, which follows the industry as much as the films.
We have our film critics. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Also with us, award-winning producer Helen Olive, who's Maria Scheider, 1983, the winner of Best Short Film at the French Oscars, the Césars this year.
Best Short Documentary.
Short Documentary. From Toulouse. Thank you for that.
That's all right.
From Toulouse, researcher Stéphanie Lamy, who studies disinformation strategies. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And from Aix-en-Provence, not too far from Cannes, Jean-Gabriel Frodet, author of the new book in French, The 7 Lives of Hollywood, Will We Still Go to the Movies? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
The France
Hello.
20... Nice to see you. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation you have on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. The hashtag is F24debate. Yeah, opening night at Cannes was most certainly not about Team Amber versus Team Johnny. Inside the Hall of Festivals, a celebration instead of Depp's first role in French and the premiere of director Maïwenne's Jeanne du Barry about a courtesan and the 18th century palace intrigue at the court of Versailles. Step away from Cannes' seafront Croisette boardwalk to the rest of France. Well, it's a bit of a different story. 123 French actresses penning an open letter that was published in daily newspaper Libération. In it, they say, quote, by rolling out the red carpet for men and women who assault the festival sends the message that in our country, to act violently in all impunity, that violence is acceptable in creative spaces. Rebecca Leffler, this has lit up social media in France. Has it lit up the Croisette, this controversy?
Yeah, it's lit up. I mean, this controversy, this controversy, it's been on the tips of everybody's tongues in the industry, in the public, basically leading up to the festival. I can't even remember a year that there's been so much buzz about the films, and we haven't even been talking about the films. Now people have seen the movie, but it was, people were talking about Maïwenne and all of the politics about her casting Johnny Depp, when really no one's really talking about the movie, which, by the way, is about a scandal that rocked, the 18th century France at the time. So it's kind of a mise en abîme situation. But it was interesting because I was at opening night, and you wouldn't know that there was a scandal. The team came in, everybody, Terry Fremont greeted them at the red carpet steps. Meanwhile, I had just written an article about the actresses that were speaking out. If you look at the social media for the Cannes Festival, there's hundreds of people that are, irate. And it was interesting. I was at the press conference, and it was really interesting because all of the U.S. trades were there and asking questions about, oh, Johnny Depp, are you upset that you're boycott about the boycott in Hollywood? And then you have all of the French journalists that were next to to me and thinking, well, why are they asking that? This is crazy. One of them even said to me, you know, it's art. Terry Fremont said the same thing. He said, I'm looking at Johnny Depp as an actor. I'm looking at the film as a film. So we're really seeing a divide also across the world and the way that everyone's looking at this.
Stéphanie Lamy, this, of course, reminds us of the controversies surrounding Roman Polanski. Those who say you should talk about the work, not the artist. Your thoughts, listening to Rebecca Leffler there, describe that gulf between how the French and the U.S. press covered Johnny Depp's appearance at Cannes.
Okay, I think there are a lot of subjects to cover here, so I'm just going to pick a few. First of all, the way that the American or the English-speaking press covered Johnny Depp's appearance in the film was completely different to how the French covered it. So the English-speaking press was much more cautious with its words, perhaps fairer in its description of Johnny Depp's performance. Whereas the French tend to romanticize violence, romanticize those stories of tortured heroes, and of course Johnny Depp coming out of this whole, series of disinformation campaigns where he was made out to look like a defamed man who could have been anybody, but no, not everybody can be Johnny Depp, right? But could be anybody who was hit with this horrible, despicable woman who's saying all these horrible things about him. Honestly, it just goes to show how Johnny Depp has managed, and his entourage, because it's a system Depp, has managed to preserve his economic interests, sideline and marginalize economic interests of other people, and we need to talk about the money side of things as well.
Well, let me ask you about that, Stéphanie, because is it when you look? I don't want to spend the hour talking about his trials with his ex-wife, but is it just a case of with these trials in America of who's the best lawyered up, or you were saying it's a system? Explain.
Well, I think the whole disinformation campaigns around the trial, the second trial especially, is quite documented. And again, we're not going to go into it again, but it's quite documented, and it is to preserve a system, an economic system, which is around Johnny Depp. And as we saw, once he was awarded his 50 million for defamation claim, all of a sudden contracts came rolling back in. So yes, it is about the money. It is about the people around him wanting to preserve that system and enabling him. And I think that's the sad part as well, is that with all the money that he has, he could get the help that he needs. And no, there's a whole system around him. And unfortunately, it looks like even during the shooting of his last movie, he wasn't able to keep doing what he was doing before.
He won his case, as you say. Is he guilty or not guilty?
I mean, that's not for me to decide. I'm talking about the system around Johnny Depp to preserve his impunity and also his economic interests.
So should Cannes have rolled out the red carpet for him?
Honestly, my opinion is no, because what we're seeing now on social media is actually a whole wave of men's rights activists, saying that all women lie, and that obviously this is vindication for these 5 years of MeToo, and yeah, it's actually quite scandalous.
Rebecca Leffler was talking about that press conference that took place on Wednesday. Depp was asked if he'd been blacklisted by Hollywood after the trial. Let's listen to his answer.
Did I feel boycotted by Hollywood? Well, I mean, you'd have to not have a pulse to feel at that point, to feel like, no, none of this is happening. This is actually just a kind of a weird joke. You've been asleep for 35 years.
Helen Olive, what's your reaction listening to Johnny Depp?
I think, you mentioned the short documentary that we made last year by a director called Elizabeth Subrin, and it was a documentary that was 3 actresses of today reenacting the words of Maria Schneider 40 years ago.
Just to remind our viewers, she was the 19-year-old star.
Yes, she was the 19-year-old star.
Last Tango in Paris.
Yes, in which there was a rape scene that she did not know about in the film and that she was subjected to on set. And it took her. She spoke about it in 1983, and it took many, many, many years for her words to be heard. And I think the job of filmmakers and as me as a producer today is to find a place. And what I'm more concerned about is finding a place and ways creatively of creating spaces for these women to be listened to, whether they're actresses or all the women who are in a situation of abuse at home. I'm more interested or more concerned about the thousands of women that are in abusive households as to whether Johnny Depp is in the next Pirates of the Caribbean, perhaps.
And you heard Stéphanie Lamy saying she's not here to judge the merits of the trial, but simply that it was the wrong decision by the Cannes Film Festival to give oxygen to those who spew misogyny on social media.
Yeah, I don't think I can say that I would support it, but the opening night of Cannes is perhaps not the place where I go to look for groundbreaking, boundary-pushing feminist films. It's
always an out-of-competition movie.
Yeah, it's fame, it's glitz, it's not the same. It's not the same arena, I guess. I don't know.
Jean-Gabriel Frodet, to Stephanie's point that Johnny Depp's not just an actor, he's big business. Hollywood's a huge industry.
Yeah, to answer to your question, of course, the scandal, the difficulty of Johnny Depp, the breakthrough of the MeToo movement is very interesting in cultural terms, but I do believe that the average spectator is more interested in which direction the movie industry is going. The question is, it seems to me, can we still in the future see a movie of the quality of Titanic, Forrest Gump, Black Rain, or is it impossible to see that sort, what we call in French, les films du milieu? And for the series, are we condemned to see this heroic fantasy, which develop always the same music? So my question is, can we bring back the Z generation to the movie theater to see movie as we love them? At the end of the last century, during the golden age of Hollywood, is this industry of content condemned? Can see quality? Can we see ambitious movies?
I want to get back to that point because I think it's essential when we break down the issue of the business model. But just one last point. I'll put it to Rebecca Leffler first. Yeah. You were at that press conference. I'm just going to play a quick clip for you, Rebecca. The director, Mai Wen, who's famous in France, little known elsewhere. She also stars in it. She plays the lead role, Jeanne du Barry. She firmly stands by her choice to cast Johnny Depp. Let's listen.
First, before going to see Johnny, I offered the role to French actors that I adored, and it didn't happen. And afterwards, I wanted to be loyal to my goal, and I said to myself that my goals are much more important than a French actor. Imperatively, I wanted there to be chemistry with the actor, especially since I was acting in it, and I was going to kiss him. So I preferred to have a sexy actor.
How did those words go down at the press conference, Rebecca Leffler?
Well, the press conference was very fiery. First of all, Johnny Depp arrived late. And what was interesting is, I don't know if it was on purpose, but after he arrived, all of the questions went to Johnny Depp. Everyone was only talking to Johnny Depp. I think what's important to know about this film, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is that it's called Jeanne du Barry. It is directed by Mai Wen. It stars Mai Wen. Johnny Depp is very much in it. He plays a key role. But it's not a movie about King Louis XV. It's not a movie. We usually see Johnny Depp as the star headlining a movie. He's not the star of the movie. So there's also at the press conference, nobody mentioned this, and they got maybe 3 words in, but there was Benjamin Laverne, there was India Ayer, there were all these other actors that are part of the film, and no one's talking about them. No one talked to them. But that said, there's also the other side that Mai Wen very much knew what she was getting into. She told me this when I interviewed her before the festival, that she knew, he had already, when she met with him first, there was no trial. When she hired him, and then when they were going to shoot, they were in pre-production after the second trial. So he lost the first trial, he won the second trial, but she said whether or not he won the second trial, they were going to shoot the movie. So the press conference was, to answer your question, it was quite fiery, and being surrounded by French press and American press, there was definitely a dichotomy between mentalities, and I think it really represents the two cultures. But Mai Wen has also been not anti-MeToo, but very outspoken about the fine lines that exist. She's, I would say, a different kind of feminist, or maybe a French feminist. Maybe there's the feminists in France are maybe on a different plane. But I just think it's a shame that everyone has been talking about this, and it does take away from the film. And it's a fine line, because obviously her movie came out the same night. The fact that Johnny Depp is in it, the fact that it's getting so much buzz and press helps. They say in America, all publicity is good publicity. That said, it does take away from the fact that if you look at the reviews, the movie's people are enjoying the movie. I thought it was the perfect movie to open Cannes, politics aside, in terms of the fact that it was a period drama. You're seeing Versailles, it's costumes, it's a beautiful movie. Whether or not one agrees about the casting choice of Johnny Depp, or whether or not he should have a career comeback based on his personal life, is another story. But I thought it was a great movie to open Cannes.
Stéphanie Lamy, of course, the director is going to stand by her lead male character. What are your thoughts on Mai Wen? Listening to her speak there.
Listen, Mai Wen is a very divisive character in France as well. She was in a relationship very young when she was in a relationship with Luc Besson, who's also been accused of sexual crimes. So she's gone down that washing machine of claims and counterclaims, and she stood by the men. And if you look at who was put up on the stage on the first night of Cannes, you also have Catherine Deneuve, who personally I adore, but who was very anti-Me Too as well. So this is kind of it's not just the movie. The first night, this first opening night of Cannes, was very much an anti-Me Too statement. And I find that very, very sad, first of all, for the women working in the industry and who've been fighting to get a little bit of attention on the issues of male, gender-based violence, and how violence is represented in the movie industry. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that, well, Mai Wen, she made a choice of, going with the buzz. Again, it's a choice of achieving commercial success, even though that you might be hiring somebody who will have been proven to be a predator by the court. As you said, she would have gone further with it, even if he'd lost his second court case. He lost the first one, he might have lost the second, and she went ahead anyhow. So yeah, for me, it's really about creating the buzz. The problem is that the buzz then kind of spills over into society, and that's the issue here, is that what happens in our societies when such a hugely important cultural event celebrates anti-Me Too. And what do we say of our society here in France that we can't even have 5 years after Me Too, have a ceremony where there's at least a little bit of consideration for the Me Too movement?
Helen Olive, Catherine Deneuve, is her presence just a tribute to one of the biggest legends, if not the biggest legend, among living French actors today, or is it tainted with the fact that she signed a few years back that petition about the right to be pestered, countering Me Too?
I do think that we have to respect her as a great artist, but I also think that in today and throughout history, what we have to be very careful about is that everything that we achieve when there are movements like Me Too, that we don't take steps backwards like 3 or 4 or 5 years later, that we don't lose anything that we've achieved, that we don't lose the momentum, that we don't lose the support of the media, that we don't lose, whether it's fertility rights or whatever it is, we don't take a step backwards. And I think that's extremely important today.
All right, let's hear from another precinct. 7 films directed by women in this year's competition out of the 21 vying for the Golden Palm. Cannes Film Festival director Thierry Frémaux has more.
Obviously, this is a record for Cannes, but I do not necessarily want to say, yes, this is great. We see the films, we watch them, we talk about them. What's great is that the presence and the growing importance of women directors in cinema means that more than before, just like in literature or music, the female perspective, female stories will arrive in another way in the world of cinema.
Your reaction to that, Helen Olive?
We have to support women filmmakers. We have to support, diverse voices. But 7 directors in a competition of how many?
21.
21 is not anywhere near what we've been pushing for over the last few years.
He says it's like 18% of all movies now are made by women, and he's got 30% in his competition. 18%
of whether is it first features, is it second features, is it third features? We have to start questioning, who are we giving the money to? Is it, because I think that, when you're a student, you come straight out of film school, I think there's 50-50 women filmmakers. First-time filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, there are many, many more. By the time we're getting to films that are in Cannes, which are films that need big budgets, that need big stars, as we see from the opening night film, then these are filmmakers that are not getting that kind of industry support. They're not getting the money. And so I think that this goes back to the question that you asked earlier, which is the question of the finance and the economy of these kinds of films.
Rebecca Leffler?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the Lab Femme du Cinéma in France. They do a lot of studies, and it's all well and good to say, oh look, there's more, a record-breaking number of female directors in competition, or things seem better because people are more outspoken. But when you look at the figures, exactly what you were just saying, when they graduate from school and there's a bunch of female directors, and as the years go on, there are less and less. So I do think it's important to champion female directors. And I do think Thierry Frémaux has been outspoken that he doesn't want to just take a movie from a woman because it's made by a woman, that he's looking at the films. Again, it's this whole question of looking at the artists and their work versus their personal aspects, like Catherine Deneuve. But this year, the French films in particular, it was a very strong year for French cinema. There were so many choices. There were a lot of, heavyweight male directors, Bruno Dumont, a lot of them that weren't, it was surprising that they weren't selected. Even Michel Gondry, not in competition. A lot of them, some of them went to sidebars, but they're not there. And so there's Ben El Adama by Ramada Toulaisi, who's a first-time French filmmaker. And so it's great that there is female French filmmakers. So it is great to see those voices are represented within this mix. So I do feel that on one hand there is progress being made, but when you look at the figures, they're not there. The numbers are not there. I think what the Lab Femme du Cinéma said that at this rate it would take until 2060 to have equal 50-50 representation.
And by the way, that open letter by 123 actors, as we mentioned at the start, it evoked predatory men and women. There are no names mentioned, not even that of Johnny Depp in that open letter. But all eyes turning when it comes to women to Catherine Corsini, whose movie Homecoming features two intimate scenes, including one involving very young actors without supervision, her cast expressing regrets, and now so has she.
Today, I realize these are very, very important issues. And I might call upon an intimacy coach, as they're called. Maybe I was a bit too proud and pretentious. I thought, well, I've got 35 years of experience. I can do things better than an intimacy coach. I've already shot a number of intimate scenes. Perhaps now I might need to be more careful to ensure that the actresses feel fully at ease.
There is your reaction listening to that.
I think she's right. I think it's actually a very honest answer, saying it's quite a humble answer, saying that she had a certain arrogance, that she's got 35 years experience as a film director. She doesn't need anybody to help her. But I think that we're all learning, since the last 5 years ago. Intimacy coaches are an incredible tool, which is quite a new tool that we should all turn to. It's not, and I think that we also have film directors think that perhaps an intimacy coach is somebody who's there to say no, but an intimacy coach isn't somebody there to say no. It's somebody there to listen to both the director and the actor and make sure that everybody is heard, and that the actor or actress knows exactly what she or he is going to do, and openly understands and accepts it, and that the director does too. And it's not about saying no; it's about creating safe spaces. But it was quite a respectful answer from Catherine.
All right, this Thursday's star at Cannes, on the croisette behind Rebecca, is an 80-year-old white man. And there are no objections to casting Harrison Ford in his most famous role in the latest of the Indiana Jones sagas. Rather, the worry is over the special effects, most notably, a bit of post-production computer magic that makes him look considerably younger. And Jean-Gabriel Frodet, this is beginning to touch upon the issues that you were broaching with us earlier. The movie industry is changing fast, and technology is raising ethical questions. How do you feel about the touching up of Harrison Ford to make him look younger?
Yeah, it's very special. But he's a great actor, and I suspect, regardless of morphing, he has the ability to seduce us and to develop a sort of emotion, which is the essence of the movie industry. So why not? Why not? By the way, Scorsese did exactly the same with the Irishman. With the two great actors,
Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. So sometimes it was so, but if you are a great actor, if you work with a great movie maker, with a great director, the spectator could be happy. Stephanie Lamy, your remit as a researcher is studying disinformation strategies. Your thoughts about a bit of a digital nip and tuck on Harrison Ford?
I think it's really interesting because it just goes to show that, perhaps men also have to start looking at their image. But it tells another story. I think what's really interesting is how we portray men. And again, I'm going to circle back to the main story, which is Johnny Depp. How do we portray men? How do we portray men in society? And yes, well, he's a great actor, and there's a little bit of nip and tuck. This isn't disinformation. I'm sorry. I know that you wanted to go there, but that's not disinformation.
It doesn't bother you.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Because it's what interests me is how people react to certain images or words, right? This is what disinformation is. How do you mobilize people to react to certain images or words? I don't think there's going to be hordes of people out there going to protest scientist, Harrison Ford having a little bit of digital nip and tuck, right? But again, he portrays a certain kind of male. I think he's a positive role image, and yeah, good for him, you know.
Jean-Gabriel Frodet, is it also because you were mentioning earlier, you were bemoaning the fact that Hollywood doesn't want to take any risks anymore. It prefers to have these franchise movies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, is it trying to extend the shelf life of their marquee actors rather than take risks on younger ones?
Yeah, sure. It's the proclivity for the franchising. It's at the heart of the American movie, and sometimes there is for the spectator what we say gross fatigue. So too much is too much. So basically the movie industry, it's for entertainment. Entertaining, it's a priority. I have nothing against that sort of stuff. But in my mind, too much movie of superhero, which always the same license, the same franchise, the same Spider-Man. Too much. So again, I have some nostalgia for the American movie. Of the 70s, the 80s, not speaking about the golden age, and the diversity of talents in Hollywood between the producers, the movie makers, the actors, and so on. So I'm eager to watch something more involving, more for me interesting, not to be boring, but you can make a commercial movie with ability to seduce with the best stuff the spectator, and movie who has a possibility to ask questions and spectator at his own answer. But the beauty of the movie is to be both.
To have a mix of the two. Rebecca Leffler, this is, of course, a gripe that's not new to Cannes. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. It's always about that balancing act between what's a commercial success and what has artistic value. And you, obviously, with movies being screened morning to night throughout the fortnight, there's a huge diversity of different kinds of movies being screened where you are. But those that make it into lots of movie houses, are they too formulaic?
It's interesting. That's a big talking point in Cannes this year, because the great news, and this was kind of last year, you know, with all these big blockbusters, and even this year, if you look at the box office, by the way, and it's not just the American franchises. In France, the movies that are doing well, it's Alibi.com 2, it's Astérix, these are, you know, sequels, franchises, big, you know, crowd-pleasing comedies that are working. And so the question now, and talking to a lot of buyers and sellers, remember, Cannes is a market, for a marketplace for films, not just a place to showcase them. And really, the issue is, okay, we got everyone to come back to theaters, but to see Super Mario Brothers and to see, you know, these big blockbusters, can we get them back to see art house movies? And the divide is becoming bigger and bigger. A lot of these sales companies are saying that, you know, you need today, because even a big commercial French film is an auteur film otherwise in other places in the world. So today, you need to have many people. The distributors are really not, as you were mentioning, not able to take risks anymore financially. So they want to see, they call them packages here. They want to see, you know, big stars, notable names. It can be even for an auteur film. They want to see, you know, a Jacques Audiard or Bertrand Bonello, or names that are known. They want to see Marion Cotillard in front of the camera, or Juliette Binoche, Benoît Magimel. And so it does hurt, up and coming talent. That said, there is, a whole other audiovisual industry with the platforms now, and you can have someone that's well known from a TV series that everybody binge watched on Netflix, and so now they're a talent to watch that then can go and star in a film that can then be sold abroad. So it really will be interesting to see if we can kind of see more Hollywood blockbusters becoming a little bit more creative and auteur, and then more auteur films becoming a little bit more commercial. It's the question of our time.
We've been talking about what stories do you tell in this in the times we live in. Helen Olive, stories told from a woman's point of view, stories told from the point of view of or for an audience that's watching it on streaming as opposed to watching it in a movie house. We had COVID. People said people wouldn't come back to the theaters. They have in France this year. Ticket sales are up, but thanks to a children's movie, Super Mario Brothers, and the latest remake of The Three Musketeers.
I do think that people don't only want to go and see commercially, the big industry films. I think that, the films that won at the César this year, whether it's Alice Diop or whether it's La Nuit du 12, they're films that are challenging, that are making us think and feel things that we might not have felt going to see Super Mario Brothers. And we have to continue supporting this kind of cinema. We have to continue supporting new filmmakers, new voices, diverse voices across the spectrum that challenge us, that make us change, because otherwise we'll stagnate. Society will just, die.
These streaming services have thrown a wrench in the system. Producers and filmmakers, including Golden Palm winners like the Dardenne brothers from Belgium and the legendary director Costa Gavras, have penned an open letter, 500 of them, to denounce the undermining of European norms that give directors and producers a look in on final versions of the script, the title of the movie, the final cut, and the trailer. These practices, they say, call into question the freedom to experiment and result in invisibiling, that's the word they use, the author by dangerously drifting towards the notion of copyright that prevails on the American market. Helen Olive, the U.S. copyright law is different from European?
Very, very different. Basically, the moral rights that we have in France protect the filmmaker and the filmmaker's voice. And in the States, it's very much a copyright law where it's the producer that gets the final cut. And I strongly believe that you have to protect the diverse voices of the filmmakers, and you have to protect it throughout the film's life.
And can we blame this on the streaming services?
I think it's because we're working with in different territories. So there's one law in France, there's one law in the States, there's one law in the UK. I don't know all the different ins and outs of the different laws, but working between different territories is making it hard. And France is a particularly strong. We have to protect the rights that we do in France.
Jean-Gabriel Frodet, you're a former New York correspondent. Your thoughts? There's right now a screenwriters' strike taking place across the Atlantic. They're upset over some of these issues. Your thoughts on this issue of how Europeans see copyright and who gets, a final look in, a final say on a movie?
Yeah, this strike is very interesting because it shows the gap, there's a huge gap between the two forms of movie. What happens during the strike, this strike of this screenwriters? There's a problem of residuals. The residuals is very important because it's connected with the right of the screenwriters to be part of the work. And as you know better than me, the upfront payment in the United States don't give any right to the screenwriters.
And Europe is becoming like the U.S.?
Progressively, you are more flexibility in your system, and you are looking at the way the streaming service are working. the point today, the focus point in the strike is the attitude of the streaming service who refuse to enhance, to rise the salary of the screenwriters, regardless the use they make of the series. A series could be with this instant release. It could be seen many times, and it never they never change the percentage or the revenue of the salary of the screenwriters.
So the model is changing. Stéphanie Lamy, is this all, we've been talking the whole hour about who we want represented on the screen, what kind of messaging we want from a movie, who's going to tell the stories. Is it changing for the better, for the worse, or will movies always be movies?
Listen, well, look, we live in an attention economy, right? So movies are in competition with a lot of different types of content. Sometimes those movies manage to mobilize other forms of content. You'll see, for example, great franchises be also memed on social media or things like that. So in an attention economy, what is important is to look at who we give our attention to. What are the stories that we're going to give our attention to as a public, and as a creator, what do we want people to, focus their attention on? So those are the two kind of principles in the information attention economy. Obviously, if we are still in a society where we are focusing people's attention on the plight of the, romantic hero who commits violence and, blah, 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 this whole very, very 19th century kind of storyline, then this is going to be a problem for society, because it's a fiction, and it's a fiction that doesn't work for us. If we're going to have more inclusive content and movies being made where attention is being focused on the voices of, marginalized people, marginalized or political minorities, that includes women, then perhaps we can start looking at each other's points of views and start moving towards something a little bit more egalitarian. And again, I'm talking from a disinformation, information, attention economy point of view. This isn't pure militantism. I'm not just.
Do you agree? Just very briefly, because we're running short on time. Do you agree with the Academy Awards in the U.S.? They're putting these inclusivity criteria for selecting movies for the Oscars. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's something worth trying. Why not? Why not? I mean, obviously the old model hasn't functioned that well. Yes, it's important to showcase political minorities. I'm not sure whether that's the right way to go, but hey, why not give it a try? I mean, this is the time to start thinking outside of the box and start focusing the attention on other people's voices.
Rebecca Leffler, we're running short on time, but the opening night film will, of course, be ancient history by the time they hand out the Golden Palm at the end of next week. At Cannes this year, what would you like to see the focus be on?
Well, it's interesting what you were just talking about. I think no one's talking enough about the subjects of the films, and even, Catherine Corsini, there's a lot of politics around that, and there was controversy, and Mai Wen. But if you're looking at the subjects of the movie, Homecoming, it's about, she's giving a voice to women who don't, she said this in the interview, that she's giving a voice to women who aren't usually the center of attention. In a film, and it's 3 Black women that she's following, and there's also a lot of stories that are telling, I mentioned Banal and Adama, that takes place, it's in Senegal in a small village, and there's no one's talking about the stories that are being told. So I think the focus, yes, it's very important who's telling the stories, how are they telling them, but also looking at the stories themselves. And the issue comes up, a man can make a very feminist movie, and a woman can make a movie that's very misogynistic as well. So I think it's really important to look at the films themselves. And as of now, obviously it's day 3, but it seems really promising that there are a diverse group of voices. And also, Cannes, it's the competition. It's also Cannes Premiere. It's Critics Week. It's Directors Fortnight. And so there are films from all over the world. And as of now, the future looks bright. It's promising. It's really amazing also to be seeing movie theaters filled with passionate cinephiles, not sitting on their couches, binge watching TV series. I mean, it's back, and everyone's been using the word comeback to talk about Johnny Depp, but let's talk about the comeback of the film industry and le cinéma.
On that positive note, we'll say thanks for joining us, Rebecca Leffler in Cannes. I want to thank Stéphanie Lamy from the southwestern city of Toulouse, Jean-Gabriel Fredet in Aix-en-Provence, Helen Olive. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.